الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام تسليما على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today will be the final lesson for this particular book. I'm going to give a summary of the last section, inshallah. Today's lesson is on the section which is titled Ta'zimul Masahif. Ta'zimul Masahif. Now, this is his final section of the book. But before I introduce the section, I just want to cover the one part of the previous section, which, and briefly as well, I don't want to spend too long on it. And that's just on this idea of these last few surahs in the Quran, the Mu'awwadhatain, and why they're important. There are two surahs in the Quran, the Mu'awwadhatain, that are in reference to Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas and Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq, surah before it. And I just want to give some kind of just quick brief overview of those two surahs, because people read them a lot, and some ahadith in relation to them. So those who are following the Arabic in my edition, it's page number 181. Fadlu tilawati al-mu'awwidhatayn wa khasa'isihima. So there's a hadith where Imam Bukhari narrates and say that Aisha radiallahu anha, that كان إذا أوى إلى فراشه كل ليلة جمع كفيه ثم نفث فيهما وقرأ فيهما قل هو الله أحد قل أعوذ برب الفلق وقل أعوذ برب الناس. But the Prophet ﷺ, as a hadith narrated by Imam al-Bukhari, that before he would go to bed, he would open his hands out and he would read Surah Ikhlas, Surah Falaq, and Surah Al-Nas, and then he would blow on his hands. And then ثم يمسح بهما أي بيديه ما استطاع من الجسد. Then he would rub his hands all over his body, wherever his hands could reach. He would do that. يبدأ بهما على رأس ووجهه, and he would begin with the face and the head. وما أقبل من جسده, and then whatever followed. So this is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that before you go to sleep you read these three surahs. Now some people, they add the fourth surah, which is قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, but that's not part of this, by the way. So when they say the four quls, read the four quls before you go to sleep, actually it's three: Surah Ikhlas and Mu'awwidhatain. The hadith doesn't mention it doesn't mention Surah Kafirun. So he writes here وفي هذا التمسح دليل على التبرك والاستفشاء والاستشفاء بهن كما نبه على ذلك الحافظ ابن كثير وغيره وفيه دليل على جواز التمسح تبرك واستشفاء واسترحاما بكلمات الله تعالى وأسمائه. So here he uses this as an evidence. He says this is an evidence to prove that one can kind of rub or place his hand on the body or somebody else's body, let's say a child, and read Quran, meaning one can read Quran and essentially blow, as we blow the Quran or the words of the Quran onto his hands, in the sense that one does that as an action and then rub his or her body. Now that idea, he said, as for shifa, this is a central proof he uses from this hadith. So that can be done with other ayat of the Quran as well. روى الإمام مسلم وغيره عن عقبة بن عامر رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ألم ترى آيات أنزلت الليلة لم يرى مثلهن. He said, do you not know that there are certain verses that have been revealed this night that its like has not been seen? And he read قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. So then these two surahs became known as the Mu'awwidhatain, the protectors, the ones that one seeks refuge with God through them. And they became famous dua. So you have the hadith, another hadith of Uqbat ibn Amir, where the Prophet ﷺ said, اقرأ بالمعوذتين فإنك لم تقرأ بمثلهما. That read these two surahs, for you will not read two surahs of their like. Imam Malik narrates from Ibn Shihab and Urwa, and he says that Aisha and Rasulullah كان إذا استشكى أي مرضا أو وجعا يقرأ على نفسه بمعوذتين وينفث. That the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would be unwell, he would read these two surahs and he would blow on himself with these two surahs. So it's sunnah to read these two surahs in this way. But or you can read all three, as in the previous hadith, but that was before the Messenger of God ﷺ would go to sleep, and that's a distinction there. Now, I want to throw in here just one additional point, that this surah, Surah Al-Falaq, for instance, has a lot of metaphor in it. So you have to try to understand what's meant by it. That would take a kind of a commentary on that surah. But for instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq. Now, why would falaq, for instance, in and of itself isn't a bad thing? Why would falaq be mentioned, and these different things? So that needs explanation. So there's a lot of metaphor in that ayah, or there's a lot of statements in that verse that need unpacking. Also, that particular surah was not revealed because a lot of people seem to understand or think, although it's a position that some scholars have held, that Surah Al-Falaq was revealed because in relation to, or that was a surah that tells us about magic being done upon the Prophet ﷺ. That's not true at all, actually. That surah was most likely revealed in Mecca. The story that has been mentioned about the magic takes place in Medina. So the meanings in the surah are quite general, and that's another point I wanted to mention. And this is confirmed by Tahir ibn Ashur in his tafsir, and he states that the chain of narration, although Imam Suyuti, for instance, had the opinion that they were revealed in Medina, but the chain of narration for that statement is very weak. And it seems quite clear that it was revealed in Makkah. The Shaykh then has a mini section, Qira'atul Mu'awwadhataini wara'a salawat maktubat, that you can read these two surahs, Falaq and Nas, after your prayers as well. And you know, it's a hadith for that the Prophet ﷺ would read them after the prayer. And also there's another narration that Qira'atul Mu'awwadhataini sab'an ba'da Salatul Jum'ah, to read it 7 times after this Jum'ah prayer. Ibn Sunni narrates a hadith of Sayyidah Aisha that the Prophet said, Man qara'a ba'da Salatul Jum'ah, he who reads after Salatul Jum'ah, Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu bi falaq, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, 7 marratin, 7 times, a'adhahu Allah ta'ala biha min as-su' ila Jum'ah al-ukhra, that God will protect him from harm until the next Jum'ah. Abu Sa'id al-Qushayri in his 40 hadith narrates a hadith of Anas bin Malik marfu'an. Marfu' means attributed to the Prophet or raised to the Prophet sallallahu. The man qara'a idha sallama al-imam yawm al-jum'ati, after the imam's given salam, that somebody who reads qabla an yathniya rijlay Fatihat al-kitab, Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu bin nas, Qul a'udhu bil falaq, and Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, sab'an ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi wa ma ta'akhkhara, he'll be forgiven for his sins, that which have preceded him and that which will come to be. This hadith, I think this is weak, very weak, this particular narration. It doesn't mention a sanad for it as well. The wording seems a little off to me. The previous hadith seems okay, however. And some of the narrations in Abu Sa'id Qushayri's Arba'ina are weak. Ta'zeem al-Masahif, the section I want to cover today, is about honoring or the magnanimity, ta'zeem, but here I would say honoring the Masahif. What is Masahif? So firstly, I want to introduce some terms. The word Mushaf, Masahif, and Quran. When we use the word Quran, it's what we read, what we recite. So the Quran is what we recite. When we use the word Mushaf, Mushaf is the physical copy. Okay, Mushaf is a physical copy. So we don't say things like, I'm going to buy Quran from the shop. You don't buy the Quran. Rather, we will say, I need to buy Mushaf. A mushaf is the the essentially the book itself, the paper and the cover. It's called a mushaf. So we don't. So adab, we don't say I need to go purchase a Quran. We say mushaf. Mushaf is essentially used nowadays anyway, or technically speaking, it's used for the physical book. Although suhuf so mushaf is a combination of pages and a cover. Suhuf in the Quran could refer to single parchments as well, like Suhuf Ibrahim wa Musa, the pages or the parchments that were given to Moses and to Abraham. Masahif is the plural of mushaf. So mushaf is the general word we use for the book itself. Quran is what you read. Al-Maqru. Quran is referred to as that which is recited. The recital is more in reference to the Quran, and it's quite interesting as well. I had this discussion of why the Quran is called the Quran, and why not call it, why that word Quran. So I kind of lean towards the idea that the Quran is called Quran because some of the ulama believe that Quran, there's an opinion that Quran is from the root word qarana, and another opinion that is from qara'a. So if it were to be taken from the root word qarana, it would mean qarana means to join one to another, that everything is seamlessly related to the other or joined together. And the ulama give the example like pearls in a string. But if it's from qara'a, which seems to be dominant, then isn't every holy book read? And I thought about this for a long time, and it seems that qara'a does make more sense, and for the following reason, that the Quran is not just a book that has ahkam, but the Quran, people who don't understand the language still recite it. That the Quran is probably the only book that has that recital dimension. The way that the Quran is recited, even the Torah, by the way, is not recited in the way the Quran, the melody, how melodious it is, the qira'at with that, the way that it can just be recited and move people. And I think that's why the root word is more related to qara'a. The Quran is the recited or the recital or the oft recited book. And I think that's why it makes more sense to relate it to that root. Now, he states, he quotes a verse, إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ فِي كِتَابٍ مَكْنُونٍ لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ تَنزِيلٌ مِّن رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Now, he quotes this verse that the Quran is a noble book. But the verse that we're kind of concerned with is لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ, that only the pure will touch it. Or to touch it. And then he writes, فَقَدْ أَخْبَرَ سُبْحَانَهُ أَنَّ هَذَا القرآن كريم أي مكرم معظم ومن ثم لا يمسه في الملأ الأعلى إلا الملائكة وتلك الأرواح العالية القدسية. That he refers that in the spiritual realm, the only people that touch it, those that touch it are the noble angels, and they are of kind of lofty spirits. لأنهم مطهرون أصفياء أتقياء وحق له ذلك, that they are the pure ones, the pure souls, and they have that right. تنزيل من رب العالمين. Then he quotes another verse, حاميم والكتاب المبين إنا جعلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون, that we have made this Quran Arabi, this word Arabic, لعلكم تعقلون, so you may, I don't know how to translate this, لعلكم تعقلون, perhaps so that you may ta'qilun, come to so that you may understand it. And the reason ta'qilun is mentioned here is, why is that related to the Arabic language? And many of the ulama state that the Arabic language is a language of tabyin. Its meanings are very, very clear and prominent, that you don't need much commentary when you're reading the Quran to understand it, kind of to get an overview of what God is trying to say, Jalla wa ala, simply because it's in the Arabic language. وَإِنَّهُ فِي أُمِّ الْكِتَابِ لَدَيْنَا لَعَلِيٌّ حَكِيمٌ. And then he mentions another verse, كَلَّا إِنَّهَا تَذْكِرَةٌ فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَهُ فِي صُحُفٍ مُكَرَّمَةٍ مَرْفُوعَةٍ مُطَهَّرَةٍ بِأَيْدِي سَفَرَةٍ كِرَامٍ بَرَرَةٍ. I covered this verse before, بِأَيْدِي سَفَرَةٍ, about these wonderful angels that And if you refer to the first or second lesson of the Quran, I refer to this hadith of Safara. I want to now kind of look at the points he mentions on the next page, or actually a couple of pages down. But what does ta'zeem mean? What does honoring the Quran mean? And he divides it into separate sections. So the subtitle is تعظيم القرآن الكريم يتطلب عدة أمور. That respecting, honoring the Quran includes many different things, and I want to kind of cover those many things today. Number one, تعظيم المصحف لما فيه من الصحف التي رسمته واحتوت عليه وجمعته. Number one, تعظيم المصحف, to respect the mushaf itself. The mushaf is the book that we have, I told you earlier. Why? Because it carries suhuf التي رسمت واحتوت عليه وجمعت. That within that is collated, within those pages is collated the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He quotes a hadith Ibn Hibban, and he states in that قال كان أي في أصل الصحابة, it was said in the time of the Sahaba, أذموا المصاحف, that respect or honor the masahif, this written word. Remember, in the time of the Sahaba, until a particular point, the Quran was written different parchments and leather and pieces, piece of cloth and leather and different things before it was compiled. ومن تعظيم وتكريمه أن يرفع ولا يوضع على الأرض. A very important point. That one of the ways to honor the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to raise it, ولا يوضع على الأرض, and that we not put it on the floor. In Turkey, even till today, you buy these little bags, the wonderfully decorated bags with a rope on top of it, and you see in Turkish houses that it's hung somewhere quite high, and that's because that's the bag that carries the mushaf. So they actually hang it on the wall. Even completely religious families will still do that to honor the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Asian homes, you have the ghilaf, where we make so. Unfortunately, the Quran has lost that particular. Well, there's two things we've lost with the Quran. One is we've lost the internal, the batin, i.e., we've lost the connection to the book of Allah and reading it, actually reciting it. But at the same time, we've also certain groups have kind of promoted this lack of adab for the Quran, as if that the only important thing of the Quran is to honor its meanings and honor its remembrance in the sense of connecting to, but also the physical aspect, we should honor that as well. So if you go to Saudi, my experience anyway, I see people putting the mushaf on the floor. I saw a man once who was sitting down and he had put his feet together and he was using it as a rack for the Quran, for the book of Allah, and he placed the book of Allah on his feet, which is terrible, a complete loss of adab, loss of manners for the book of Allah. Imam Nawawi talks about this in his Etiquette of the Quran, which has been translated by Musa Ferba, I think, which you should check out. So that's the first thing he mentions. وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ كَرِيمٌ, because this Quran is noble. وَالْكِتَابُ الَّذِي كُتِبَ فِيهِ, and the paper that is written within, وَجَمَعَ مُكَرَّمْ وَمُعَظَّمْ, is also noble as well. Because Allah said, إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ فِي كِتَابٍ مَكْنُونٍ وَهَذَا الْكِتَابُ مَكْنُونٌ هُوَ اللَّوْحُ الْمَحْفُوظ. Allah says it's in a preserved book, Kitab Maknoon, and that means it's in reference to the tablet, this tablet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed all information that up until the day of judgment is preserved therein. Allah says, بَلْ هُوَ قُرْآنٌ مَجِيدٌ فِي لَوْحٍ مَحْفُوظ فَالْكِتَابُ وَالصُّحُفُ الَّتِي كُتِبَ فِي كَلِمَاتُ الْقُرْآنِ الْكِتَابُ مُكَرَّمٌ. He mentions a few more points. So then he goes on to try to prove that, but I mean, I think I've mentioned enough things. وَالْمُصْحَفُ يُعَظَّمُ وَيُكَرَّمُ وَلَوْ بليت أو تشققت صحفه. The Shaykh says وقال في الدور المختار, that it's mentioned in دور المختار المصحف إذا صار بحال لا يقرأ فيه يدفن كالمسلم. And this is another important topic. What do you do with Qur'ans or the mushaf that now is the pages are ripped, that are not in a good condition, one cannot read from it anymore. He mentions one Hanafi position that you should bury it. That's one opinion, that you should bury it. Imam Ibn Abidin mentions that you put it in a khirqa tahira, in a cloth that's clean. وَيُدْفَنْ فِي مَحَلْ غَيْرٍ مُمْتَهًا لَا يُطْهَى. Put it in a place that people are not going to walk over, or it's not going to be dug up, and you should bury it. That's one opinion. So, and he continues to mention that position, but I'm going to give the various opinions on this, by the way. On the next page, وقال في شرعة وفي شر النقاية. He writes that not only the Quran, but anything with the name of God, the name of prophets, the name of angels, should be put into water, and so it disintegrates. Or تدفن في أرض طاهر, or it should be put in buried somewhere. ولا تحرق بالنار. أشار إليه الإمام محمد في السير الكبير, and it shouldn't be burnt. Now, however, I'm going to go to that opinion as well. So another way is for it to disintegrate. That wouldn't be even if you put chemicals into it, as long as the meaning is achieved. So then he mentions a few other opinions. He writes, وقال في الكنية لا يجوز في المصحف الخلق أي الذي بليت أو تشققت صحفه الذي لا يصلح للقراءة فيه لا يجوز أن يجلد به القرآن. Now, interestingly, that's an interesting. Can you take it then, and then can you reuse it? He says no. Now, I would have assumed that the reason for that is because if you tore it up and then you used it as a wrap or something like that, the verse of the Quran would be cut, and then names would be mixed up and things of that nature, and that's why that wouldn't be permissible. He says, فَأْتُبِرْ وذكر أي الآكل فإن المصحف فيه كلام الله فإن فضل كلام الله تعالى على سائر كفضل الله تعالى على خلقه. That's fine. He gives another opinion then. لا يجوز مد الرجل إلى المصحف. No, let me finish. He doesn't add to this. So Imam Suyuti, however, does add in his Itqan. Some of them had an opinion that if you can't do anything else, and you can burn it. So there is an opinion that you can burn it, but it's not the best opinion, especially for the Mus'haf. I think that what if, aside from burying it, what would be the opinion of recycling the paper? That's something to look at, i.e. that because when they recycle it, it's not the same paper, the words disappear entirely. That would be something to look at. And then to reuse that paper to print the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again. I personally think there's no haraj in that. I think that's perfectly fine. Especially if it's for printing other masahif. What do you do with Islamic literature aside from the Quran? I personally think the Quran may have a distinct ruling. Other Islamic literature may have another ruling, where I think personally, if it disintegrates to a degree where nothing remains of it, I think that's perfectly fine. One opinion was mentioned of putting it into water, so I think that can work as well. Even burning, I would argue that for Islamic literature, if it's burnt I don't see an issue with that. Because as long as it completely disintegrates and nothing's left of it, because we're dealing with a huge problem now where there's masses of literature that have Allah's name or the Prophet's name in it. What do we do with that? That would be an issue. So yeah. Next, he talks about stretching one's legs towards the Quran. He says it's not permissible according to the Bazaziyah, which is a collection of fatwas in the Hanafi school. مَدُّ الرِّجْلِ إِلَى الْمُصْحَفِ إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ الْمُصْحَفُ مَرْفُوعًا. Unless the book of Allah is raised somewhere on a shelf, then it's fine. Then one can do it. But you shouldn't put your feet towards it. بحيث لا تقع المحاذاة بين موضع المصحف وبين الرجل, meaning it can't be at the same level. قال فإنه لا يقرأ حينئذ. At that time it's not makruh to do that. He says وبهذه المناسبة نقول قد نص الفقهاء على قراءة مد الرجل إلى القبلة. He adds a point which is an interesting point, that you shouldn't point your feet towards the Qibla. والدليل على ذلك أن جهة القبلة مؤذمة. And the proof of that is the Qibla is mu'azzam, is something that's respected and honored, because it's where you place your head and point your head towards. You shouldn't point your feet towards that. My teacher, Mufti Rasul Bak Saidi, Ustad al-Ulama, I remember he would never stretch his legs generally in that way, and unless he was in a very loose environment with his friends maybe, but not in front of his students. But one day his knees were really hurting, and he said to me, we're sitting in class, and he said, look, I really need to stretch my legs, so because my knees are hurting. I didn't really make any deal with that. I thought that's a bit odd thing to ask for, but it was just his mannerism that in class he would never ever do that, and so he stretched his legs, and so the ulama don't really do that, but it changes from place to place, of course. Certain cultures like Mauritania, they lie down and teach sometimes in the desert, maybe because of the heat and things like that. So they have their own adab as well. So not to knock that particular practice. He mentions a few dalils for it as well. And the dalils are as follows. إذا صليتم, the hadith of the Prophet says, if you pray, فلا تلتفتوا فإن الله ينصب وجهه لوجه عبده ما دام في صلاته. So this is about praying, and if you pray, فلا تلتفتوا, don't move around, don't move. And he's trying to show that you shouldn't move from the Qibla when you're praying. So it's because it's so honorable and so much, it's so kind of respected and honored. Then what about pointing your feet towards it? And there's another narration he mentions, أيكم يحب أن يعرض الله تعالى عنه إن أحدكم إذا قام يصلي فإن الله تعالى قبل وجهه فلا يبصقن قبل وجهه فلا عن يمين ولا عن يمين ولا عن يبصق عن يساره تحت رجله اليسرى. He quotes several ahadith. I don't even need to cover all of these. He quotes a hadith of the bathroom. إذا أتيتم الغائط فلا تستقبلوا القبلة ولا ولا تستدبروها ولكن شرقوا أو غربوا. Here's a mas'ala, which is when you, in those days, they would go to the bathroom outside. So the Prophet said, don't face the Qibla, nor turn your back to it, turn sideways. So similarly, to have the toilet in your house pointed towards the Qibla is makruh for that reason. Qibla either way. Because these are one's a hadith that don't face the sun as well, and things like that. There's other hadith similar to that. So he mentioned an interesting narration of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. He said, when we got to Sham, to Syria, we found marahid. Marahid are like bathrooms. Like they never had bathrooms in Makkah, Medina. They would just go outside. And they were called buniyat qibla. They were facing the qibla. But let's look at Abu Ayyub's narration. He said they were facing the qibla. He said, فَنَنْحَرِفُ عَنْهَا وَنَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ. We will like shift our position and then make tawbah for it. He continues and he writes that كما أورد ذلك الحافظ المنذري في الترغيب في الجلوس مستقبل القبلة. So again he's arguing about the point of the qibla. Hafid Mundhari mentioned something similar. From Abu Hurairah رضي الله تعالى قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن لكل شيء سيد. Everything has a master. فإن سيد المجالس قبال القبلة. Sayyid al-Majalis, mean the Sayyid of sittings, is what? Facing the Qibla. Facing the Qibla. Meaning the best, most spiritual position to sit in is facing the Qibla. Next he mentions in Raisha ibn Umar قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أكرم المجالس ما استقبل به القبلة. The best of majlis gatherings are those that face the Qibla. And several other ahadith as well. Now, next section I want to get to كانوا يقبلون المصحف ويمسحون به. They would kiss the mushaf and they would touch it. Imam Darbi narrates with a sound narration from Ikma ibn Abi Jahl I remember Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl, became a believer. Al-Hayy ibn al-Mayyit, he calls him Al-Hayy ibn al-Mayyit, the living son of the dead. That kana yada'u al-mushaf ala wajhi, he would put the mushaf on his face and he would say, Kitabu Rabbi, the book of my Lord, meaning this is the book of my Lord that he has revealed by the means of the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. He mentions from Dur al-Muhtar that from Ibn Umar that كان يأخذ المصحف كل غداة ويقبله ويقول أهد ربي ومنشور ربي. He would take it, Ibn Umar would take the mushaf every day and then he would kiss it and he would say Ahdu Rabbi, this is the covenant of my Lord. Sayyidina Uthman would kiss the mushaf and he would he would wipe it on his face, touch his face with it. So this is another kind of sunnah of the Sahaba, you could say, the way they honored and respected Quran. To look at the Quran when you wake up in the morning. When we wake up in the morning, we look at our phones. But when you wake up to look at the Quran, Awza'i states, كان يعجبهم النظر في المصحف. They would merely be amazed by looking at the mushaf, meaning the early Muslims. Yeah. كان كثير من الصحابة يقرؤون في المصحف ويستحبون أن لا يخرج يوم إلا وقد نظروا في المصحف. That the Sahaba would not want to leave the house until they had gazed upon the mushaf, meaning just to open it and to look at the words of the mushaf, to gaze upon it would be something very important. قال وخرق عثمان بن عفان مصحفين من كثرة درسه فيهما. That Sayyidina Uthman got through he got through two mushafs because they had essentially withered away because of his constant reading of them. This narration he mentions, and this is narrated by Sahib al-Qut. كان كثير من الصحابة, the same narration. قال العلامة الفاسي states كان الأئمة والصالحون من السلف أول ما يبدأون إذا أصبحوا النظر في المصحف. The salihun, the pious people and the imams would first thing they did was they would look in the mushaf when they woke up. وكانوا يأمرون من اشتقى بصره أن ينظر في المصحف. That somebody who had weak eyesight, first thing to do is to look in the mushaf. We've covered a lot of these umur already, but yeah, I want to finish the book today, inshallah. And he has a beautiful nasiha at the end that I just want to read through. It says, "An-nasiha li kitabillah wajiba." Giving advice in relation to the book of Allah is wajib. Walaha matalib. It has its kind of matalib or objectives. روى الإمام مسلم and Tamim al-Dari, that the famous hadith Adinu Nasiha. He said, the Messenger of God said, alayhi salatu, the deen, the religion is nasiha, is advice or sincerity. And he said this 3 times. And they said, for who, O Messenger of God? He said, for the book of Allah, for his messengers, and for the imams of the believers, and for the masses. And then what that means is that, what does advice mean? That one must have sincerity with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَنَسِيَ لِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ مِنْ أَهَمِّ الْوَاجِبَاتِ. Being sincere with the book of Allah is from the greatest of wajibat of this religion. وَعَظُمُ أَشَدُّهَا مَسْئُولِيَةً. Now he says, the nasiha of the kitab is فَشِدَّةُ حُبِّهِ. Number 1. What does that mean? Nasiha to kitab. Number 1, that we should have extreme love for the book of Allah, وَتَعْظِيمُ قَدْرِهِ, and we should venerate it. إِذْ هُوَ كَلَامُ الْخَالِقِ, because it is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, كَلَامُ الْخَالِقِ. And he quotes several things about that. Next, he says, I'm going to mention them in brief, of course. وَالنَّهْيُ عَنِ اتِّخَاذِ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا يَتَنَاوَلُ الْأُمُورِ. Number 2, we should not take the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a joke, and this includes a few matters. أول سوق بعض الكلمات القرآنية في المساقات الهزل أو المزاح. You should never use the words of Allah in any way joking. Don't make jokes out of the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way or form. Meaning the words of Allah, the play on the words, etc. Similarly, people shouldn't incorporate, I've seen sometimes that singers are incorporating words of Allah, ayat, into like lewd music and things like that, which is completely haram, if not kufr. You have lewd music and, and then you're incorporating words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Quran into that, meaning actual verses of the Quran. One shouldn't do that. And number two, so that was the first point, i.e. that to have extreme love and do not take as a joke or do not mock the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or taking it lightly. Number two, adamul ihtimam bi awamir al-Quran nahihi, that you're not sincere, you're not fulfilling the rights of the Book of Allah if you don't see as important the rules, the laws of Allah, His commands and His prohibitions. And number three, al-ihtiyal ala nusus al-Quran al-Kareem, that to not take away the correct meaning of the Quran, and this is probably nowadays is happening the most, where people are giving another meaning to the Quran that the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, not another meaning, they're taking the meaning that the companions had and the Tabi'een and removing that meaning. There's no problem in adding meaning to the Quran. We mentioned that earlier, the Quran has infinite number of meanings, but it cannot contradict the meaning that came with the Messenger of God, with the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. The meanings that were revealed. He says, that these are the people essentially who took it from the hearts of and the tongues of the men who met the Sahaba, and they were men who met the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. Number four, عدم الثقة واليقين بما أخبرت عنه آيات القرآن. Do not lose trust and yaqeen, certainty in what God has mentioned. Whatever anybody tells you. I remember Majid Nawaz, who is, I think, the co-founder of Quilliam. He was on, I think he's on a particular radio show, and he was saying, mentioned a particular verse, and somebody phoned in and he said to somebody, do you not have a problem with that verse? And he said, don't you have a problem with that verse? Isn't that verse wrong? Which is Ain al-Kufr, yani. And the simple answer to that is no, we don't have any problem with any verse of Allah Jalla wa Ala. We have zero problem with it. These are the words of God. God said them how He said them. We believe in every single word, every single letter in the Quran. If you have a problem with it, then, pick another religion. Well, Muslims don't have a problem with that. There may be a problem in our understanding of that, 100%. But we don't have any problem with what God mentioned as He intended it to be revealed. Jalla wa Ala. If you have a problem with that, like I said, you can always choose another religion. لا إكراه في الدين. Now, وذلك مثل ما رواه ابن منذر وابن أبي حاتم عن قتادة بينما رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في غزوته إلى تبوك إذا نظر إلى أناس بين يديه من المنافقين يقولون أيرجو هذا الرجل أن تفتح له قصور الشام وحصونها هيهات هيهات فأطلع الله نبي عليه الصلاة والسلام ذلك فقال احبسوا علي هؤلاء ركب فأتاهم فقال عليه الصلاة والسلام قلتم كذا وكذا قالوا يا نبي الله إنما كنا نخوض ونلعب. So some of them began to joke about the Quran, some of the munafiqeen, saying that do you think that أيرجو هذا الرجل أن تفتح له قصور الشام, meaning they were making fun that does this man think that the qusur of Sham will be opened up to him, that do you think what God is saying is this is they were joking about the verses of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And look what happened. I mean, qusur Sham and more open for the Messenger of God. Allah revealed وَلَئِن سَأَلْتُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ. When you asked them, they said we were just joking, we were just playing. قُلْ بِاللَّهِ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِ وَرَسُولِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. With the verses of God and His signs and His messenger, you were joking, you were making fun of, you were mocking. فَنَهْيُ أَنْهُ. Allah prohibited وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا. Do not take this word of God lightly or in jest. وَالَّذِينَ يُمَسِّكُونَ بِالْكِتَابِ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ إِنَّا لَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُصْلِحِينَ. Those who take the book of Allah seriously and they stand in prayer, we will not restrict the reward of those people who are upright. هذا وقد تم جمع هذا الكتاب, the Sheikh says, and here we have completed the book. And he completed it in 1401 Hijri. Nas'alullah ta'ala al-qabul. We have only summarized the book. I didn't attempt to finish the whole thing. The Sheikh was one of the greatest scholars of hadith of this era. I was blessed to have visited him, although I didn't see him, but I traveled to visit him. We weren't allowed into the hospital room a few days before he passed away in 2002. And I was honored to be part of his funeral prayer and the procession. What a great scholar he was, Sheikh Abdullah Sirajuddin. We pray that Allah envelop him in his mercy, and that Allah forgive him and raise his rank and place him with the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. And we pray that we've taken benefit from the reading of some of this book, select sections, although we've covered in parts large sections of it, and that Allah allow us to incorporate this into our lives and to inculcate and to hold firm to the book of Allah. And if I were to give any advice, everything should be anchored in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which has become a forgotten book for many of us believers, and to return and to have a strong relationship with the book of Allah. And I hope everybody's benefited from these lessons. We started them before Ramadan, and we finish now in Shawwal, in the first 6 days, these blessed days. And may Allah bless us through his book. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لي ولكم وأتوب إليه وسائر المسلمين وبأسرار سورة الفاتحة لشيخ إن شاء الله تعالى. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.